My son-in-law thought I didn't notice him putting something in my drink, so I switched glasses. The conversation continued. Marcus lifted what he thought was his glass and took a long, satisfied drink. I watched every drop go down his throat, my pulse racing with a mixture of terror and grim satisfaction. Have you ever caught someone trying to poison you at your own family dinner? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The clear liquid hit my wine glass like a raindrop, silent, deliberate, deadly. He smiled at me across the dinner table, thinking I was too old to notice. Have you ever caught someone trying to poison you at your own family dinner? Ever felt invisible to family members who underestimated your awareness? What happens when the person trying to eliminate you becomes the victim of their own scheme? Stay tuned to discover how one grandmother's quick thinking exposed a conspiracy that ran deeper than anyone imagined. I was 74 years old when I learned that death could come from someone who called you Grandma. The dinner table at my daughter's Austin home looked perfect that Tuesday evening. Candles flickered between the serving dishes, casting warm light on faces I'd known and loved for decades. My daughter Lisa had cooked my favorite pot roast, and the conversation flowed as smooth as the wine we were sharing. Everything felt normal, until I caught my son-in-law Marcus leaning over my glass. His hand moved with practiced precision. Something small and clear dropped from his fingers into my red wine, dissolving instantly. He straightened up, adjusting his tie like nothing had happened, then turned to me with that charming smile that had won over our entire family 3 years ago. How's the wine, Grandma Helen? He asked, his voice dripping with false concern. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face calm. 47 years of marriage to a man who built houses with his hands had taught me when to stay quiet and when to act. This was a time to act, but smart. Delicious, I replied, lifting my glass halfway to my lips before setting it down. Just letting it breathe a little more. Lisa was busy serving seconds to her 2 kids, completely absorbed in mother mode. The grandchildren, my precious Emma and Jake, were arguing about school projects, their voices creating perfect cover for what I was about to do. Marcus reached for his own wine glass, and that's when I made my move. During Emma's animated story about her science fair project, I casually switched our glasses. My arthritis made my hands shake slightly, but not enough for anyone to notice. His glass was now in front of me. Mine sat before him, waiting. The conversation continued. Marcus lifted what he thought was his glass and took a long, satisfied drink. I watched every drop go down his throat, my pulse racing with a mixture of terror and grim satisfaction. If this blind spot cost them years, imagine yours. Subscribe so you don't miss the fix. Non-subscribers, tell me in comments why you won't hit that button. Within 10 minutes, his face changed. The healthy color drained away, replaced by a sickly green tint that no amount of candlelight could hide. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Excuse me, he mumbled, pushing back from the table. I don't feel so good. Lisa looked up with concern. Honey, what's wrong? You look terrible. He stumbled toward the hallway bathroom, one hand pressed to his stomach, the other gripping the wall for support. The sounds that followed, retching, groaning, the slam of his body hitting the bathroom floor, made Lisa jump up and rush after him. Mom, call 911. She shouted from the hallway. I sat there, my untouched wine glass in front of me, watching my grandchildren's faces fill with worry. They had no idea they'd just witnessed their stepfather poison himself. They had no idea their grandmother had just saved her own life by thinking faster than a man who thought age made me stupid. The paramedics arrived within 12 minutes. They loaded Marcus onto a stretcher, asking questions about what he'd eaten, what he'd been drinking, whether he had any medical conditions. Lisa rode with him to the hospital, leaving me to watch the kids and clean up the dinner that had turned into a crime scene. After the house went quiet and the children were asleep, I found myself standing in Lisa's kitchen, staring at the wine glasses we'd left on the table. Mine still held the evidence of what Marcus had tried to do to me. His was empty, drained by his own hand. That's when I started asking the questions that would change everything. Why did my son-in-law want me dead? What did he gain from my death? And most importantly, was my daughter involved? Within minutes, his face drained of color. He stumbled toward the hallway. Everyone thought food poisoning, but I knew better. Comment switched if you would have done the same thing. The house fell quiet after the ambulance left. That's when I found the first envelope with my name crossed out in red ink. Lisa had rushed to the hospital with Marcus, leaving me to put Emma and Jake to bed. After I tucked them in and read their bedtime story, the house settled into an eerie calm that made my skin crawl. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every whistle of wind through the windows felt like a warning. I should have gone home to my ranch in San Marcos. Should have driven the 45 minutes back to my own bed, my own walls, my own safety. Instead, something pulled me toward Lisa's home office, a nagging voice that said tonight's events weren't random. The desk sat in the corner of their living room, covered with the usual family clutter, school permission slips, grocery lists, soccer schedules. But underneath the normal chaos, I spotted something that made my blood freeze. An envelope addressed to Helen Martinez Henderson lay half-hidden under a stack of bills. My full name was typed across the front in official letterhead, but someone had drawn a thick red line through it. Above my crossed-out name, Lisa Henderson Cross, was written in handwriting I recognized as my daughter's. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a life insurance verification letter, confirming coverage amounts and beneficiaries for something called Estate Planning Services of Houston. The numbers made me dizzy. $500,000 in coverage. Death benefit payable within 30 days of verified death certificate. But here's what stopped my heart. The policy was dated just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Right around the time Marcus had started asking casual questions about my health, my driving, my plans to live alone on the ranch. I sank into Lisa's desk chair, the letter shaking in my hands. The lamplight seemed dimmer now, casting shadows that felt like accusations. How long had they been planning this? How many conversations had they had about my death while I was sitting right there, invisible in my old age? The house phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped the letter. Lisa's voice came through the answering machine. "Mom, Marcus is stable. They're keeping him overnight for observation. Looks like food poisoning. I'll be home late, don't wait up." Food poisoning. The lie came so easily to her, I wondered what other lies I'd been believing. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my purse. Then I walked through their house, looking at family photos with new eyes, wondering which smiles were real and which were just waiting for the right moment to cash in. The signature on the insurance beneficiary form wasn't mine. But it was close, too close. Have you ever discovered you were being erased from your own life? The desk drawer stuck like it always did, but this time I pulled harder. Inside lay a stack of papers that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my daughter. Morning came too early. Lisa returned from the hospital around 2 a.m., exhausted and worried about Marcus. She'd fallen asleep immediately, giving me the perfect opportunity to continue what I'd started the night before. The desk drawer had always been temperamental, warped with that fought back when you tried to open it. But desperation gave me strength I didn't know I still had. When it finally gave way, documents scattered across the desktop like evidence of a crime. Property deeds. Bank statements. Trust amendments. Insurance forms. All bearing my name, my signature, my personal information, but none of it looked right. I picked up the first document. A quitclaim deed transferring my ranch property to Henderson Cross Family Trust. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, but I'd never signed any quitclaim deed. I'd never even heard of the Henderson Cross Family Trust. The next paper made my stomach clench. A loan application for $200,000, using my ranch as collateral. Again, my signature appeared at the bottom, dated just 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I was in Oklahoma visiting my sister Betty. I wasn't even in Texas when this was supposedly signed. But the worst discovery sat at the bottom of the pile, a handwritten note in Lisa's careful script. "Marcus says we need to move faster. Mom's too healthy for her age, Could live another 15 years. Can't wait that long for the ranch money. Need to explore other options. Other options. The words echoed in my mind as I remembered the clear liquid dropping into my wine glass. I photographed everything with my phone, a skill Emma had taught me just last Christmas. Each document, each signature, each incriminating note got captured and saved to the cloud storage Jake had helped me set up. My grandchildren had no idea, they just helped me build a case against their mother. Financial fraud happens to seniors daily. Subscribe to see how she fights back, or become the next victim. The bedroom door creaked. Lisa was stirring, probably getting ready for her morning shower before heading back to the hospital. I quickly reorganized the papers, making sure everything looked exactly as I'd found it. The drawer fought me again as I closed it, but this time I was grateful for the struggle. It meant no one else had been in here recently. Mom? Lisa's voice called from upstairs. You still here? Just making coffee, honey, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. While the coffee brewed, I scrolled through the photos on my phone. 27 images of documents I'd never signed, agreements I'd never made, financial decisions I'd never approved. Each photo told the same story: my family was stealing my life one signature at a time. And last night, when documents weren't enough, they'd tried to speed up the process. At the bottom of the stack, a life insurance policy dated last week. Beneficiary, my son-in-law. Amount, $500,000. Pause and guess, how long has this been planned? Martha's voice cracked over the phone. Honey, you need to know what your son-in-law asked me about your ranch last month. I'd driven home to San Marcos that morning, my head spinning with everything I'd discovered. The familiar sight of my ranch house, the place my husband Tom and I had built our life together, should have brought comfort. Instead, it felt like a target painted on my back. Martha Gonzalez had been our neighbor for 30 years. She and her late husband Carlos had helped us through Tom's cancer, and I'd returned the favor when Carlos passed 2 years ago. We checked on each other daily, shared garden vegetables, and knew each other's business the way only country neighbors can. What kind of questions? I asked, settling into Tom's old recliner with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. He came by on a Tuesday, you remember, that day you drove to Austin for Emma's school play. Said he was just being neighborly, checking on your property while you were away. My grip tightened on the phone. Marcus had never shown interest in being neighborly before. He barely tolerated our rural lifestyle, always complaining about the drive from Austin whenever they visited. He asked about your fences, whether you'd been maintaining them properly. Asked about your water well, your septic system. Then he got real specific about property values, what similar places had sold for recently. The questions sounded innocent enough, but combined with everything I'd found in Lisa's desk drawer, they felt like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. But here's the part that bothered me, Martha continued. He asked if you'd been having any health problems. Said he was worried because Lisa mentioned you'd been forgetful lately. Forgetful. I'd never been more sharp in my life. My doctor had just given me a clean bill of health at my annual checkup. I could still balance my checkbook to the penny, still remember every detail of conversations from 20 years ago. Martha, I haven't been forgetful. Lisa never said that. Silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Honey, Martha said finally, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, there's more. He asked if you'd be driving alone to San Marcos next weekend. Wanted to know your usual route, what time you typically made the drive. My blood turned to ice water. Next weekend was when I'd planned to drive to the bank in San Marcos, the same bank where Tom and I had kept our safety deposit box for 40 years. The box Marcus didn't know existed. The box that held our original will. He asked if you'd updated your will recently. Then he asked if you'd be driving alone to San Marcos next weekend. Red flag or coincidence? Drop your vote below. The notary public had never seen me before in her life. Yet somehow, she'd supposedly witnessed my signature on 12 different documents. After Martha's phone call, I couldn't sit still. The walls of my ranch house felt like they were closing in, every shadow hiding another secret. I grabbed my purse and the copies I'd made of the forged documents, then drove straight to Houston to find answers. The address on the notary stamps led me to a small office squeezed between a nail salon and a payday loan store. "Quick Notary Services," read the faded sign in the window. Inside, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" I spread the documents across her counter like playing cards. "These papers have your notary seal on them. I'm Helen Henderson, and these are supposed to be my signatures." Her face went pale as she picked up the first deed. Then the second. Then the insurance forms. Her hand started shaking by the fourth document. "Ma'am, I've never seen you before in my life." "That's what I figured. But according to these stamps, you witnessed me sign all of this paperwork over the past 6 months." She set the papers down and looked around her small office nervously, as if someone might be listening. "Look, I don't want any trouble. But there's this man who comes in here regular. Brings pre-signed documents, says his clients are too elderly or sick to come in person." "What's his name?" "Marcus Cross. Always pays in cash, always tips well. Says he works for some kind of elder care service, helping families with their paperwork." Elder care service. The lie was so smooth, so believable. How many notaries had he fooled with that story? "He brings the papers already signed?" I pressed. "Yeah, and he has this official-looking folder with medical forms, says his clients have mobility issues or memory problems. Shows me their IDs, driver's licenses, even medical records sometimes." My medical records. Marcus had access to everything through Lisa, my insurance information, my doctor visits, even my prescription history from when Tom was sick and I'd been on his health plan. "Ma'am," the notary whispered, looking around nervously again, "there's something else. Last time he was here, about 2 weeks ago, he said something that stuck with me. He said his mother-in-law wouldn't be needing any more notary services soon." The room spun slightly. 2 weeks ago was right before the life insurance policy was finalized. Right before Marcus had started asking Martha about my driving habits. "Did you keep copies of what you notarized?" "I'm required to keep a log, but..." She pulled out a thick binder and flipped through pages. "Look, here's the thing. Mr. Cross always brings his own log pages, says it saves time. Pre-filled with all the information. Pre-filled logs. Fake signatures. Cash payments. The system was designed to leave no trail back to him. Flag this notary's behavior, legal or criminal." The estate attorney's face went white as she flipped through my documents. "Mrs. Henderson, this isn't just fraud, it's attempted murder with financial premeditation." Jennifer Walsh had been practicing elder law for 20 years. Her office walls displayed certificates and awards for protecting seniors from financial abuse. If anyone could help me understand the legal mess my family had created, it was her. "I've seen my share of family fraud cases," she said, adjusting her reading glasses as she studied the forged quitclaim deed. "But this level of sophistication suggests professional planning. Your son-in-law didn't just steal your signature, he built an entire false paper trail." She spread my documents across her conference table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. Each paper told part of the same story, the systematic theft of my life's work. "The timing here is crucial," Jennifer continued, pointing to dates on various forms. "Look at the sequence. First, they established the family trust without your knowledge. Then they transferred your property into that trust. Next came the insurance policies. Finally, the loan applications using your ranch as collateral. How much money are we talking about? Conservatively, your ranch is worth about $400,000. The life insurance policies total $500,000. The loans they've applied for add another $200,000. We're looking at over $1 million in assets they've attempted to control or steal. $1 million. No wonder they wanted me dead." Jennifer picked up her phone. "I'm calling the district attorney's office. This crosses state lines, involves multiple financial institutions, and includes attempted murder. We need law enforcement involved immediately. Elder fraud costs families billions yearly. Subscribe now, learn the warning signs before you're targeted. While she made the call, I stared at the forged signatures that looked so much like my own handwriting. Marcus had practiced. He'd studied my signature until he could reproduce it perfectly. How long had he been planning this? "Mrs. Henderson," Jennifer said after hanging up, "I need you to understand something. Filing these complaints will start a process you can't stop. Your daughter will likely face charges along with her husband. Your family relationships may never recover." "My family relationships are already over. They tried to poison me." "I believe you, but proving attempted poisoning will be difficult without physical evidence. However, the financial fraud is ironclad. We have forged documents, fake notarizations, and clear intent to defraud." She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "Here's what we're going to do immediately. First, I'm filing an emergency injunction to freeze all accounts associated with your name. Second, we're requesting immediate return of your property from the fraudulent trust. Third, we're filing a police report for identity theft and financial fraud. What about the life insurance policies? Those get canceled immediately. I'll contact each company today and inform them the applications were fraudulent." Jennifer's phone rang. She answered, spoke briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. "That was Detective Rodriguez from the Houston Police Department. He wants to meet with you this afternoon. Apparently, you're not the first elderly woman they've heard about in connection with Marcus Cross." Not the first. The words hit me like a physical blow. How many other families had he destroyed? How many other grandmothers had he targeted? "Mrs. Henderson," Jennifer said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "Detective Rodriguez asked me to tell you something. They've been investigating a pattern of suspicious deaths among elderly women in the Houston area. Women who had recently changed their wills or taken out large life insurance policies." The room felt airless. "Deaths? We're filing emergency motions today. But Mrs. Henderson, they know the system too. This gets dangerous now. Predict, will the legal system protect her fast enough? I found our original will in the bank safety deposit box my husband opened 40 years ago. Every word was exactly as we wrote it, and nothing like what my family had been shown. The drive to First National Bank of San Marcos felt like traveling back in time. Tom and I had opened our safety deposit box in 1984, the same year we'd bought the ranch. He'd been so proud that day, talking about leaving something solid for our children and grandchildren. "Something they can't take away from us," he'd said, holding the small brass key like it was made of gold. Now that same key felt heavy in my palm as I sat across from the bank manager, Mrs. Rodriguez. She'd worked here for 15 years and remembered both Tom and me from our regular visits. "I haven't seen you since Mr. Henderson's funeral," she said gently. "How are you holding up?" "Better than some people hoped," I replied. The safety deposit box sat in front of us like a treasure chest. Inside, Tom had organized everything with the careful precision of a man who'd spent his life building things to last. Our original will, signed and notarized in 1995, lay on top of the stack. I opened it with shaking hands, remembering the day we'd written it together at our kitchen table. Tom had insisted on handwriting our intentions in the margins, just to make sure there was no confusion about what we wanted. "Helen gets everything," the will stated clearly. "House, ranch, all accounts, all possessions. After Helen's death, property is split equally between Lisa and Michael, with provisions for grandchildren's education." Simple. Fair. Exactly what we'd intended. But the margins held the real treasure. In Tom's careful handwriting, "If anything happens to both of us, make sure our children protect each other, not prey on each other. The ranch is Helen's security for life. No one should pressure her to sell or give it up." Tom had known. Somehow, he'd sensed that money might divide our family someday. Mrs. Rodriguez leaned over to read the document. "This is quite different from the will your daughter showed us last month." My blood froze. "Lisa was here?" She came in asking about the box, said she was helping you organize your affairs. We couldn't let her access it without your permission, of course, but she did show us a copy of what she claimed was your updated will. What did it say? That you decided to put everything in a family trust, with her as the primary beneficiary and trustee. She seemed surprised when we told her about this safety deposit box. Said you'd never mentioned it. I photographed every page of our original will, every handwritten note in Tom's careful script. Then I made copies using the bank's machine, asking Mrs. Rodriguez to witness and initial each page. Mrs. Henderson, she said as we finished, is everything all right? You seem worried. A note in my husband's handwriting: if anything happens to both of us, make sure our children protect each other, not prey on each other. Share this story if you believe family should protect family. He was still groggy from the stomach pumping when I walked into his hospital room. The words that came out of his mouth made me wish I'd used more poison. St. David's Hospital in Austin buzzed with the usual activity of afternoon shift change. I'd driven straight from the bank, my purse heavy with copies of documents that proved Marcus had been lying to everyone for months. The original will sat like evidence in my passenger seat. Marcus lay propped up in bed, for tubes snaking from his arms, looking pale and defeated. The nurses had told me he'd been admitted for severe food poisoning, but I knew better. I knew exactly what had made him sick. Hello, Marcus. His eyes flew open, focusing on me with effort. Whatever they'd given him for pain had left him loose-tongued and unguarded. Grandma Helen, he slurred, trying to sit up straighter. Didn't expect to see you here. I bet you didn't. I pulled the visitor chair close to his bed and settled in like I was planning a long conversation. His medical chart hung at the foot of the bed, documenting the treatment for unknown toxic ingestion. Funny thing, I continued, keeping my voice conversational. The doctors say you ingested something that made you violently ill. Can't figure out what it was. His eyes narrowed, even through the medication haze. Must have been something I ate. Or something you drank. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, the hospital gown making him look smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. Predators target the vulnerable. Subscribe, don't let your guard down when it matters most. You know, he said suddenly, his voice thick with whatever they'd given him for pain, Lisa always said you were sharper than you looked. Said we underestimated the old lady. The confession hit me like a slap. We? Lisa thought you'd just sign whatever we put in front of you. Old people do that, you know. They trust their families. He laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match his usual charming demeanor. But you kept asking questions about the trust, about the insurance papers. Made things complicated. So you decided to speed things up. The ranch is worth serious money, Grandma. Lisa's got kids to think about, college funds to worry about. We couldn't wait 15 more years for you to die naturally. The casual way he said it, die naturally, made my hands clench in my lap. This man had sat at my dinner table, laughed at my stories, hugged my grandchildren, all while planning my murder. How many others, Marcus? Others? How many other old ladies have you helped die naturally? His expression went blank, the medication making him forget to lie. Just 3. Well, for if you count Mrs. Patterson, but she really did have a heart attack. Through his drugged haze, he mumbled, your daughter said you'd never fight back. Guess we were wrong about the old lady. Comment underestimated, if you've ever surprised someone who doubted you. My daughter stood in my kitchen doorway holding the hospital discharge papers, and I could see in her eyes that she'd made her choice, and it wasn't me. Lisa arrived at my ranch house just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the porch where Tom used to sit and watch the cattle graze. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her clothes wrinkled from spending 2 days at the hospital. Mom, we need to talk. I'd been expecting this conversation since Marcus's drugged confession yesterday. I'd spent the entire day preparing for it, gathering every document, every piece of evidence, every photograph I'd taken. The kitchen table was covered with proof of their betrayal. Lisa stopped in the doorway when she saw the papers spread across the table. Her face went pale as she recognized the forged deeds, the fake insurance policies, the trust documents she'd thought were safely hidden in her desk drawer. "Where did you get these?" "From your house. While you were busy playing the worried wife at the hospital." She sank into Tom's old chair, the one he'd sat in for every important family discussion. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our daughter was about to destroy everything he'd built, using his own chair as her throne. "Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You and your husband decided I was worth more dead than alive. It's not that simple." Lisa's voice cracked, and for a moment, she sounded like the little girl who used to run to me when she scraped her knee. Marcus showed me the numbers. The ranch, the insurance, the investments, it's over $1 million just sitting here while Emma and Jake need college funds. "So you forged my signature and planned my murder." "We never planned to hurt you." The words exploded out of her, desperate and defensive. "The original plan was just to get you to sign the trust documents willingly. Make it look like you were planning for the future." But I kept asking questions. Lisa nodded miserably. "You wanted to read everything, have your own lawyer look at the papers. Marcus said that was too risky, that you might figure out what we were doing. I picked up the life insurance policy with my forged signature. So you took out policies on my life and decided to speed things up. The drink was just supposed to make you sick," she whispered. "Marcus said a little stomach bug might make you more agreeable to signing papers, maybe scare you into thinking about your mortality." The lie came so easily to her, I almost admired the skill. But I'd heard Marcus's confession, his casual mention of 3 other elderly women who died under similar circumstances. "Lisa, look at me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "Your husband is a serial killer. He's murdered at least 3 other women, and I was supposed to be number 4. "That's not true. He confessed yesterday while he was drugged up on pain medication. Told me all about the others, how easy it was to get elderly women to trust him." The color drained completely from her face. "No, that's impossible. Marcus wouldn't." "Marcus would and did. The question now is whether you're going to keep defending a murderer or start protecting what's left of our family." I slid the original will across the table to her. Tom's handwritten notes were clearly visible in the margins, his careful instructions about protecting each other instead of preying on each other. "Your father knew this day might come. He tried to prepare for it." Lisa read the will through tears, her hands shaking as she recognized her father's handwriting. When she finished, she set it down and looked at me with something that might have been regret. "What do you want me to do?" She set the keys to my house on the counter and said, "You can keep your ranch, Mom. But you've lost your family. Family loyalty versus money, which would you choose?" The handwriting expert's report landed in my mailbox like a bomb. 17 separate documents. 0 authentic signatures. Unanimous conclusion. Systematic forgery. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa walked out of my kitchen, choosing her husband over her mother. 3 weeks of lawyers, police interviews, and forensic analysts examining every piece of paper Marcus had touched. Detective Rodriguez had been thorough. He'd collected samples of my real signature from bank records going back 20 years, then sent everything to the state crime lab for analysis. The report that came back was more damning than even I had expected. The suspect demonstrates advanced knowledge of handwriting manipulation, the expert had written. Forgeries show evidence of extensive practice and professional-level skill. Pattern suggests perpetrator has formal training in document analysis or forensic science. I sat on my porch reading the report while my coffee grew cold. Professional-level skill. That explained why the fake signatures had fooled so many notaries, bank employees, and insurance agents. Marcus hadn't just practiced my handwriting. He'd studied it like a science. The phone rang inside the house. Detective Rodriguez's voice was tense when I answered. "Mrs. Henderson, we need to talk. The forensic report has opened up some new developments in our investigation." "What kind of developments?" The kind that suggests your son-in-law has been doing this a lot longer than we thought. Can you come to the station this afternoon? An hour later, I sat in a conference room at the Houston Police Department, surrounded by file folders and evidence boxes. Detective Rodriguez looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mrs. Henderson, based on the handwriting analysis and some other evidence we've uncovered, we believe Marcus Cross has been operating a sophisticated elder fraud scheme for at least 5 years. Possibly longer. He opened one of the file folders and spread photographs across the table. Death certificates, insurance claims, property transfers, all involving elderly women who had died under questionable circumstances. Margaret Patterson, age 78, died of an apparent heart attack 3 weeks after taking out a $300,000 life insurance policy. Dorothy Chen, age 81, fell down her stairs and broke her neck 2 days after signing a quitclaim deed transferring her house to a family trust. Ruth Williams, age 75, died of food poisoning at a family dinner, leaving behind a newly updated will that cut out her siblings. The photographs blurred as tears filled my eyes. These weren't just statistics, they were grandmothers, mothers, women who'd worked their whole lives to build something to leave their families. How many? I whispered. We've identified 7 confirmed victims so far. There may be more. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, you're the first intended victim who survived. Your evidence, your survival, your testimony, it's going to help us put this man away for the rest of his life. But the report's final line stopped me cold. Pattern suggests professional training. Perpetrator likely has legal or financial background. How many documents would it take to convince you of fraud? Word travels fast in small Texas towns. By Thursday, 3 other widows had called to tell me about their own family financial advisors. The first call came while I was eating breakfast on my porch, watching the sunrise paint my pasture gold. Betty Morrison from down the road had heard through the church prayer chain that I was having family troubles with my son-in-law. Helen, honey, I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for months. I set down my coffee cup and listened as Betty described a young man who'd approached her after her husband's funeral. Charming, well-dressed, claiming to specialize in helping widows manage their finances. He'd convinced her to sign papers putting her house in a trust for tax purposes. Sounded so smart, Helen. Had all these official documents, knew things about my mortgage and insurance that seemed impossible for a stranger to know. The second call came an hour later. Martha Rodriguez, who lived closer to San Marcos, had a similar story. A man claiming to be a financial advisor had visited her last spring, shortly after her husband passed. He'd known specific details about their savings account, their property value, even their children's names. He said my son in Dallas had hired him to help me organize my affairs. But when I called David to thank him, he had no idea what I was talking about. By noon, the third call arrived. This one made my hands shake so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Mrs. Henderson? This is Carol Chen. I think your son-in-law killed my mother. Carol's mother Dorothy was one of the women Detective Rodriguez had mentioned, the 81-year-old who'd supposedly fallen down her stairs. But Carol had never believed the accident story. Mom was terrified of those stairs. She'd been using the handrail religiously for 5 years, ever since her hip surgery. The idea that she just slipped and fell. Carol's voice broke. The man who'd been helping her with her paperwork was at the house that morning. Said he was picking up some documents she'd signed. What did he look like? Tall, sandy brown hair, really nice smile. Drove a silver sedan. Called himself Mark Cooper, but I bet that wasn't his real name. Mark Cooper. Marcus Cross. How many fake names had he used? Elder abuse thrives in silence. Subscribe to stay informed. Your awareness protects entire communities. By evening, I'd received 7 calls total. 7 elderly women or their surviving family members, all describing encounters with a charming financial advisor who'd known too much about their personal business. 3 of the mothers were dead. 4 had signed away property or taken out insurance policies they didn't remember agreeing to. I made a list of everything they told me. Fake names, dates of visits, types of documents involved, family members who'd supposedly hired his services. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Marcus hadn't just targeted me, he'd built an entire business around murdering elderly women for their money. The fourth caller said something that made my blood freeze. "Honey, I think your son-in-law killed my husband." Drop the name of someone who checks on elderly neighbors. The FBI agent's badge looked small in her large hands, but her voice carried the weight of federal law. "Mrs. Henderson, you've uncovered a multi-state conspiracy." Agent Sarah Martinez arrived at my ranch on Friday morning, followed by 2 other agents and Detective Rodriguez. They transformed my kitchen table into a command center, spreading files and photographs across the surface where Tom and I used to play cards. "Mrs. Henderson, what you've discovered goes far beyond local fraud," Agent Martinez explained, opening a thick folder marked Operation Silver Target. "We've been tracking a network of individuals who specifically target elderly widows across Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana." She laid out a map dotted with red pins. Each pin represented a suspicious death or disappearance of an elderly person who'd recently updated their will or taken out large insurance policies. 17 confirmed deaths over the past 3 years. Average victim age, 74. Average estate value, $800,000. Total stolen, over $12 million. $12 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about my ranch or my life, it was about an entire industry built on murdering seniors. "Marcus Cross is what we call a closer," Agent Martinez continued. "He's brought in when other methods of persuasion fail. The network includes document forgers, corrupt notaries, inside sources at insurance companies, and even some funeral directors who help stage accidents." Funeral directors? They provide death certificates without asking too many questions. Make suspicious deaths look natural. Your son-in-law's method was poison, but others in the network preferred staged falls, medication overdoses, or household accidents. Detective Rodriguez opened another file. "Mrs. Henderson, your evidence broke this case wide open. The handwriting analysis, the forged documents, your photographs, it gave us everything we needed to connect Marcus to the other deaths." Agent Martinez nodded. "We've been trying to infiltrate this network for 18 months. Your survival and willingness to come forward provided the missing piece. We now have enough evidence to arrest the core members and shut down the entire operation." "What about Lisa?" "My daughter? Her involvement appears limited to the documents related to your estate. She may face charges for fraud and conspiracy, but the murder charges will focus on Marcus and his core associates." I stared at the photographs of women who looked like they could have been my neighbors, my church friends, my bridge partners. Dorothy Chen smiled from her driver's license photo. Margaret Patterson posed with her grandchildren at what looked like a Christmas gathering. Ruth Williams wore a floral dress in her church directory picture. "They trusted him," I whispered. "They trusted someone who looked respectable, who knew details about their families, who seemed to care about their welfare." The network was sophisticated. They researched their targets for months before making contact. Agent Martinez leaned forward. "Mrs. Henderson, we're going to need your testimony when this goes to trial. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Tom's handwritten note in our original will, about protecting each other instead of preying on each other. I thought about the women whose photographs covered my table, women who would never get justice unless someone spoke for them. "Agent Martinez, I've been preparing for this fight my whole life. I just didn't know it. We've been tracking this group for 18 months. Your evidence just gave us everything we need for arrests. Justice incoming, what punishment fits this crime?" I watched from my kitchen window as they led him away in handcuffs. My daughter stood on her porch, finally understanding what she'd married. The arrests happened simultaneously across 3 states at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Agent Martinez had called me the night before to warn me it was happening, but seeing it unfold in real time still took my breath away. Marcus came out of Lisa's house in pajamas and handcuffs, his usual confident smile replaced by the pale shock of a man who'd finally been caught. Two FBI agents flanked him as they walked to the unmarked car parked in the driveway. Lisa stood in her doorway wearing her bathrobe, Emma and Jake peeking around her legs with confused, frightened faces. She watched her husband being loaded into the car like she was seeing him for the first time. Agent Martinez had told me they'd found evidence in Marcus's home office that connected him to all 17 deaths. Insurance policies, forged wills, detailed notes about each victim's daily routines and vulnerabilities. He'd kept trophies too, photographs of the women, copies of their death certificates, even jewelry that had supposedly been lost during their final illnesses. The other arrests were happening simultaneously. The corrupt notary in Houston. Two funeral directors who'd falsified death certificates. An insurance agent who'd expedited suspicious claims. A lawyer who'd helped establish fake trusts. The network was bigger than anyone had imagined. My phone rang as the police car disappeared down the street. "Mom?" Lisa's voice was small, broken. "Can I come over?" 30 minutes later, she sat at my kitchen table in the same chair where she'd tried to justify stealing my life savings. But this time, she wasn't defending Marcus. This time, she was crying. "I didn't know about the other women," she whispered. "I swear on Dad's grave, I didn't know Marcus was killing people. But you knew he was stealing from me." "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. "But he said it was just paperwork, just getting you to plan for the future. He said all families did things like this to protect elderly parents from making bad financial decisions." I studied my daughter's face, looking for traces of the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when thunder scared her. She was still there, buried under years of bad choices and worse influences. "Lisa, your husband is a serial killer. He murdered at least 17 elderly women for their money. You married a monster." She nodded through her tears. "What happens to Emma and Jake? What happens to us?" As the police car pulled away, my daughter walked across the yard and said the words I'd waited months to hear. "Predict." What did she say? The judge's gavel came down with finality. "All fraudulent documents are hereby voided. Original estate documents are restored to full legal standing." The courtroom felt like a church during the final hearing. Families of Marcus's victims filled the wooden benches, some crying quietly, others holding hands in solidarity. I sat in the front row with Lisa beside me, both of us staring at the man who'd tried to destroy our family. Marcus wore an orange jumpsuit now instead of his expensive suits. The charming smile was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of someone who'd finally run out of lies. He'd pled guilty to avoid the death penalty, accepting 17 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Judge Williams had presided over elder abuse cases for 20 years, but she said this was the most systematic and cruel scheme she'd ever encountered. "Mr. Cross, you didn't just steal money, you stole the final years of peace these women deserved after lifetimes of hard work. You destroyed families, shattered trust, and turned the natural bonds between generations into weapons." The property restoration had taken months of legal proceedings. Every forged document had to be individually examined and voided. Every fraudulent transfer had to be reversed. My ranch, my accounts, my insurance policies, everything stolen through Marcus's schemes was officially returned to my control. But the emotional restoration was more complicated. Lisa had cooperated fully with the investigation, providing evidence and testimony that helped convict 2 other network members. In exchange, she'd received 5 years probation and community service requirements. She'd also lost her job, her house, and most of her friends. Justice won, but vigilance never ends. Subscribe, protect yourself and your community from predators. "Mom," she said as we left the courthouse, "I know I can't undo what I did. I know saying sorry doesn't fix the trust one broke. But I want to try to make things right." Emma and Jake walked between us, holding both our hands. They'd been through months of therapy, trying to understand how their stepfather had been a criminal and their mother had helped him. The counselor said they were resilient, but I could see the wariness in their eyes that hadn't been there before. "Lisa, making things right means more than just apologizing. It means proving every day that you've changed. It means putting Emma and Jake first, always. It means never again choosing money over family. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever it takes. The legal victory felt hollow without Tom there to share it. He would have been proud that I'd fought back, but heartbroken that our family had been torn apart by greed. His handwritten notes in our original will had been the key evidence that proved our true intentions and protected everything we'd built together. Walking out of that courthouse, I realized something important. Winning in court was just the beginning. The real work would be rebuilding trust, healing wounds, and making sure this never happened to another family. The paperwork was signed, but rebuilding trust with my daughter would take longer than any legal process. Forgiveness earned or freely given, what's your philosophy? 6 months later, I sat at a new dinner table. This time checking my own glass first, but surrounded by people I could finally trust again. The table was smaller now, set up in my ranch house kitchen instead of Lisa's formal dining room. Just 4 of us, me, Lisa, Emma, and Jake. Marcus's empty chair had been replaced by a bookshelf filled with photo albums and the legal documents that proved our family's real history. Lisa had moved back to San Marcos after losing her Austin house, renting a small place near the elementary school where the kids could walk to classes. She worked at the bank now, ironically, the same bank where Tom and I had kept our safety deposit box. Starting over at 42 wasn't easy, but it was honest work. Grandma Helen, tell us again about how you switched the glasses, Emma asked, cutting her pot roast into careful pieces. The story had become family legend, but I never tired of telling it. These children needed to understand that being underestimated could be a strength, that paying attention could save your life, that sometimes the most dangerous people wore the friendliest smiles. Well, honey, I noticed something wasn't right, so I stayed calm and made a smart choice. Like a spy. Jake added, his eyes bright with admiration. Like a grandmother who'd lived long enough to know when something felt wrong. Lisa smiled across the table, but I could see the sadness that would probably never fully leave her eyes. She'd learned the hardest way possible that trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. But she was trying. Every day, she was trying. The Helen Henderson Foundation for Elder Protection had been established with some of the recovered funds from Marcus's network. We provided education programs for seniors about financial fraud, supported law enforcement training on elder abuse cases, and funded legal assistance for victims of family financial crimes. Agent Martinez visited last month to update me on the ongoing investigation. They'd identified 12 more victims in surrounding states and arrested 6 additional network members. The ripple effects of our case were still spreading, protecting elderly people I'd never meet from predators I'd helped expose. Mrs. Henderson, she'd said, your willingness to fight back has probably saved hundreds of lives. But the real victory sat around my dinner table every Sunday. Emma and Jake were thriving in their new school. Lisa was rebuilding her life one honest day at a time. And I was still here, still sharp, still watching over my family with the wisdom that comes from surviving something meant to destroy you. I keep that original will in a frame now, not because I'm paranoid, but because I'm prepared. Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets, but wisdom? That's built to last. Share one piece of advice you'd give to vulnerable seniors in your community. If this grandmother's courage inspired you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment about the bravest person in your family. And remember, age might slow your step, but it sharpens your instincts. Stay alert, stay strong.